MAPE Basics session. This is an hour-long session for anyone interested in learning some more foundational information about our union MAPE, as well as unions more broadly. So I'll be kind of going through a bunch of content today for the majority of the time, but we will leave some time for questions and answers. And you can feel free to interact in the chat. I have Meredith Richmond here, who is a fellow MAPE leader. And Meredith, I know you'll be putting some key links in the chat, but maybe feel free to also respond to chat. I'll try to monitor the chat to answer questions, but we'll make sure that your questions get answered one way or another. So yeah, and then we also have some sign language ASL interpreters here today, and hopefully you're seeing, I think we got it all set up so they are spotlighted so that you can see them. But if you have any issues whatsoever, don't hesitate to raise your hand or put something in the chat, and we want to make sure that the technical pieces of that are in place. So. All right, I'm going to get started. We're going to start with some interaction here. So please answer in the chat how long you have been in a MAPE represented position and what agency you are with. I always really enjoy seeing the wide variety of work represented by our MAPE represented employees. And like also seeing how long people have been in MAPE represented positions. We get a lot of new people, obviously, but sometimes folks are coming in after being in a MAPE represented position for a while. All right, I'm already seeing some answers here. Okay, we've got someone from Metro State and 6 weeks, so pretty new. Welcome. We've got 9 months, 6 weeks. This is great. Seeing some new people here. So welcome. I know it's a lot to start a new job, let alone start with a new organization as big as the state of Minnesota. I hope your experience so far has been good. But this just gives me a sense. And we've got a lot of different agencies represented here. So I'll try to give you everything kind of more broadly information. We will have a survey at the end of the session that will be an opportunity for us to get feedback from you. And it's also a way for us to connect you with your local leadership, which is a really nice first kind of way to just get looped into your union. I'll talk more about locals, but it's a way to organize ourselves so that we aren't just one big mass of people. We've got ways to organize ourselves and be connected with smaller groups that we can kind of build power together through being in relationship with one another. So I'll talk more about that, but I'm going to get into the content now. So first of all, what is a union? A union is as good as the effort and energy that members contribute. It's really important that we don't third party our union by saying the union. You are the union, particularly if you become a MAPE member, which we'll talk about. But we have power as a union being workers because we have a collective voice of organized people, organized resources, and organized ideas. And we can use that power to improve our workplace and through that also have the ability to negotiate wages, benefits, and working conditions. Unions can inherently be some of the most democratic organizations that we have. And so if you take anything away from all of what I'm going to talk about today, is that we are better when you are part of what we are building together. We want your voice and we want you involved in what we're building because this is a democratic organization and we're stronger when we have your voice and we have your active participation, and we can do a whole lot more when kind of a many hands make light work sort of situation. And we can just do a whole lot more when there's a lot of us. So some of you may have seen, I feel like this is a classic bumper sticker on cars, but thank a union for the weekend sort of thing. Unions throughout history have been responsible for pretty much every single benefit that you experience as a worker today. There's usually some very interesting history that's been buried in the history books about it. If you come to MAPE meetings, you might get some great historical perspective on how we won various benefits. But here you'll see some examples. So going way back when, child labor laws. Thank you, union, for that. Having pension programs. Pensions have become less and less common as an offered benefit in workplaces. You will see a direct correlation of having a pension and having a union, because unions can be that kind of safeguard protection to management essentially pillaging pension plans for their shareholders or whatever. Pensions are absolutely the best way to prepare for retirement in conjunction with other things, but it's definitely something that is something that we need to continue to fight for. But thank you, union, for that in the first place and for maintaining that. I'm going to talk about paid parental leave really quick. And I realized just now that I kind of forgot to say my name and where I work. Lauren Siegel. I work at the Department of Human Services, and I've been at the state for 12 years now. And definitely what's kept me at the state this long is having a voice in the workplace by having a union. And my first experience with being involved with MAPE, I joined MAPE as a member pretty much right away because I talked to a MAPE leader, and I knew I was generally supportive of unions, but I didn't really know what that really meant in practice. But I became a member because they told me this is the number one way to support yourself and support our union, which fights for fair wages. Okay, done. I joined. I wasn't involved right away, but then about 2 years in, I had a coworker who invited me to a meeting where other coworkers were sharing about their experience of not getting enough time off after having a child and just the challenges of that. This was back in, I would say, 2016, maybe 2017. And right away, I was very aware of the challenges of having a child and also juggling having a job too without proper paid leave options. People were relying on vacation, sick, FMLA. And I joined the MAPE Paid Parental Leave campaign with many others, a lot of work. We were able to negotiate with Governor Dayton 6 weeks of paid parental leave, which was a huge win. And that set a standard in Minnesota. Other, companies in Minnesota like General Mills started offering a similar benefit because we set a standard, and they needed to keep up with the, market for employment in Minnesota. Fast forward to January 1st of this year, after the legislature passed it, we now have a state benefit for paid leave. And I firmly believe that it was the work of MAPE members that's, again, set a standard. And that's kind of how all these things work. It was workers coming together to demand health insurance, sick leave, vacation at a particular, company, and then, fighting hard enough that management had to cave because they need workers, and then having ripple out effects. So I'm very proud of what we accomplished, and always looking for what we can accomplish next. All right. I am going to then go over, state of Minnesota generally has a lot more collective bargaining in the environment than other, with private employment. This gives you a sense of the percentages of state employees that are in a collective bargaining unit. MAPE is actually a little bit bigger than AFSCME now. We have grown a bit over the last couple of years, but we represent around 18,800 workers. That's a lot of people power, and that's, if we're organized and working in conjunction with one another, we can accomplish a great deal. So we need you. We're excited to have you. AFSCME is another union that has a big presence, and we tend to collaborate with them during contract negotiations, which makes us an even bigger section of workers that management needs to pay attention to us. We actually had a town hall yesterday that we, in conjunction with AFSCME, to kind of announce plans regarding negotiations for our next contract that'll be coming up next spring, summer. So that's great. We also have, if you have a supervisor versus a manager, they're likely in the Middle Management Association, which is that black piece of the pie. And then you can see here some of the other collective bargaining units represented at the state. So we've got 18,800 people represented by MAPE. We have to be organized in a particular way and kind of have a governance structure that makes it truly a democratic organization. So this helps to start illustrate that. I'm going to start with, actually at the top, delegate assembly. That is the highest governing body for our organization. And I mentioned our locals, and we'll get into that, but the amount of people in your local dictates the number of representatives that get sent to delegate assembly, where at DA, every year, decisions are made about our bylaws and other governance structures for our union. And so it's consequential decisions, and a lot of work is done in preparation for that to set up the decisions for this large decision-making body. We use Robert's rules. It's a great experience. It was actually my first elected position that I ever had. And it's a commitment of 2 days in a year, but you learn a lot, and then you can engage in your union in new ways just with that foundational understanding. So definitely consider, if you're interested in getting involved in our union and having a say, definitely consider that, and at least engage with your delegates when it comes time, we're getting close, to have your voice be represented through the delegate. Then next is the board of directors. They will make kind of some year-round decisions. There's limitations to it compared to delegate assembly, but you have a representative on the board of directors depending on the region that you're in. We have 21 regions, and your regional director should be interacting with your region, giving information bi-directionally. So what did the board discuss, bringing it down, getting feedback from you all, and then taking that information and representing from their respective regions, the locals within it, at the board when they're making decisions. Again, we have 21 regions, and you get a seat on the board of directors. You have a group of stewards, and we'll talk more about what stewards do. But you'll have a lead steward director that is a regional one. And then you also get to, and I should mention, these are elected positions. So the director is an elected position. And when you're a member, you get to vote in elections. The negotiations representative is another elected position, and that person will represent your region at the bargaining table during contract negotiations. They do a ton of work leading up to that to make sure that they're getting feedback from the folks in their region, and working in conjunction with our structure for organizing ourselves, which are called contract action teams. Hopefully they're collaborating with lead contract action team reps. You'll notice here that a region can have multiple locals in it or just one local. And again, the determining factor there is the number of people in it. So our local, I'm in local 2101, which is Department of Human Services. We are the largest local in our union, but not the largest region. we are our own region because we have so many people in it. And there needs to be a, direct correlation of number of people represented on the board of directors. Within a local, you've got a number of elected positions and positions that people can kind of be appointed to or take on without an election. At the local level, you can have president, vice president, secretary, membership secretary, and treasurer. The local, I would highly encourage you to make sure that you're connected to your local and can attend your monthly local meetings. That's a great first start to being kind of involved in and just aware of happenings happening in your union. And again, we'll go over how you can figure out what your local is. But locals are not always like super consistent in what makes up the local. But it does, make sense overall from generally as a number standpoint. So local 2101, for example, we're just Department of Human Services and Minute at Department of Human Services. We're generally all in one building. Actually, we really are in one building. So that's nice and clean. Meredith here is in Region 9 and I believe 901. So Meredith can speak to, there's Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and Minute represented, probably multiple buildings, I'm guessing too. So it's a little bit less, 2 buildings. Okay. So, you see that there can be, multiple configurations constituting a local, but you'll be able to see all that when we go over how to find your local. There will be a nice map and you'll generally be able to see which agencies are represented within your local. We also have a civic engagement officer, which is a new role, and that is appointed. People generally stand up for it if they are interested in the political process and organizing around, and I'm not talking like necessarily partisan politics, but we'll talk a little bit more about how politics in general impacts us as workers, impacts the work we do. And if we don't do work in that sphere, we're kind of putting ourselves at a disadvantage. So really excited about that new role. And then of course we've got workers again in 23 different agencies and boards. Also, speaking of agencies and boards, we have agency-based meet and confer committees, which is a mechanism for agency-specific issues, I suppose, that come up, percolate up from workers, can be brought through our meet and confer process. And so it's good for you to know who your meet and confer chair is so that you can bring issues to them. And, for example, in our local, we are, for DHS, I should say, we're experiencing a lot of challenges in terms of workload because of pressures from the federal government. And we recently did some listening sessions and brought what came forth from workers through that mechanism straight up to management, because we have contract language that gives us that process, and we should use it to address issues and make sure that they are understanding what's going on for us as workers. All right. Now, for unionized employment, I think a central piece of it is that we have a contract that is legally protected, and the language codified in the contract can only be changed during negotiations. Again, we negotiate our contract every 2 years, so the next one will be next spring and summer when we're negotiating. And within the contract, it includes things such as wage increases, benefits, worker rights, and we're advocating for those as a collective, which I much prefer because, again, it's much easier to go in with a ton of workers because they need all of us. They can't lose us all at once. And for us to put pressure on them to ask for wages that keep pace for inflation, with inflation, for example, it's much easier than me going to my boss and being like, you need to give me a raise. Well, I'm replaceable as an individual. I hate to admit it, but I am. Many of us are. And it's just much more powerful. We'll have much more weight if we're doing this as a collective. And the stats show it. Unions are much more successful in keeping and getting adequate pay raises in comparison to comparable non-unionized workplaces. I brought up stewards a little bit earlier. It's important for you to know who your stewards are. And again, I'll go through the website. You'll be able to see how to find your steward that's in your local and region. But what stewards do is they are informal and formal problem solvers in the workplace, and they are the heart of contract enforcement work. So far I've been talking a lot about how we get a good contract during negotiations through people power and organizing. But there's also a really important component of enforcing the elements that we have already negotiated in our contract and understanding how we can improve that language for it to be more beneficial or get at the real true purpose of what we need as workers. And stewards are really the heart of that. If you are interested in getting involved in our union, I highly recommend you going through basic steward training. It gives you a sense of our contract and kind of the responsibilities of a steward and just really important key functioning of a union. There's a way to sign up for basic steward training. There's even advanced steward training. If you ever are dealing with something in the workplace, if you feel like anything from you feel like the contract could be interpreted a different way and how it's impacting you, or if you just have questions about what the contract language means, reach out to a steward. Stewards also help with more serious issues, like if you need to file a respectful workplace complaint or file a grievance for, again, you're not treated fairly under the contract, and just also informal problem solving too. So it's important to know who your stewards are so you can reach out to them with any questions that will arise for you. So I want to just compare unionized employment to non-unionized employment. In a non-union employment situation, policies and procedures can change kind of whenever the employer wants. I hear stories from friends and family of this happening all the time, and just how, if it's a big corporation, how there will be a policy change short notice that cut someone's ability to, work in a particular way, and it can happen with no notice. There's no way to push back, and it's all to save money, and it can hamper workers' ability to do their job. It can also cut benefits. I know someone who had like their whole vacation accrual situation change overnight without any notice. It went from being able to carry over year to you have to use it within the year, which is a huge difference. I'm sure there's people that have stories about that, so I'm going to ask about that in a second. Additionally, wage increases can occur inconsistently at the discretion of management. You might go to your supervisor and ask for a raise, and if they like you, maybe they'll give you something. If they don't like you based off of arbitrary preferences, they'll maybe say no. And there can be favoritism, that can be sexism, racism inherent in a lot of those processes when it's all one person's decision. So the things, when you have a union, you can have a say in so many different things, whether it's wage increases, healthcare. We've got a healthcare coalition that works directly regarding, networks. And also we always need to be working hard to keep our health insurance premiums low. Parental leave, I already gave that example. We have severance language in our contract about how management needs to handle severance. Layoff procedures are very important, particularly in these times. We sometimes have layoff procedure sessions to make sure that workers understand what that process is like. We haven't had a lot of layoffs, but when something happens in this tumultuous environment, people will ask, and they deserve to know what our layoff procedures are, and we can negotiate changes to it through our contract negotiation process. So I want to get a little discussion in here now. I've been talking for a long time. So many of us have probably experienced challenging work environments. What is one thing you would have changed about your last workplace if you could? So this is a chance for you to kind of share, either in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. What was something that was really challenging in your workplace that you would have liked to have a way to change? I'm gonna be quiet for a little bit so you can think and start typing things in. Maybe I'll look at chats in the meantime. Thanks for answering the question about Robert's rules, Meredith. Oh, people are quiet today. Limited resources in small private agency. Yeah, that comes up a lot when I ask this question in these sessions. People talk about having being expected to do the work of like 3 people, 4 people, and just so that management can save money or what have you. And we do have a process through our union to do something called a workload meet and confer, where you can organize with your coworkers, the help of a steward, and to have direct contact with the kind of delegating manager and even higher up if needed to figure out how to make the workload reasonable in order to fit kind of the constraints of our contract and just make it reasonable. So there's non-unionized workplaces don't really have formalized structures like a workload meet and confer to handle things like that. All right, I'm going to read some more. Organization where they do not pay out remaining PTO when you leave, is PTO paid out here? Yes, it is. Good question. And I think it goes, Meredith, I know you're an expert on this. I think it goes into our healthcare savings plan, but correct me if that's wrong.
Yeah, I was just pulling up the contract section that describes it. This is covered in the vacation section of the contract and the severance section of the contract, and it gets transferred into your healthcare savings plan, which is a retirement account run by MSRS for healthcare expenses.
Yeah, it's very nice job. Thank you. Appreciate you fact checking me. What's nice about that is it's tax free. So I know sometimes people are like, oh, but I'd kind of like the cash in hand. Yeah, it's a thing, but there's definitely tax reasons to do it. And then yeah, it all in all, you'll come out ahead hopefully. But good question. Someone here was part of a layoff and there was no information provided about the severance, and we just didn't know anything except rumors until we got the notice, which made planning for the future much more stressful. That does sound extremely stressful. I'm really sorry that you went through that. And yeah, there needs to be consistent processes, because at a company without a union contract, layoffs can look wildly different depending on the circumstance. And that puts workers at a huge disadvantage to be able to make sure that they're getting proper severance and proper information regarding their layoff. Good ones. I'm gonna maybe not read through all of them just because I probably should keep going, but thank you so much for sharing. I'm seeing some more stuff about layoffs too. Oh my gosh, yeah. There's a lot of layoff situations here, and I know people do come to the state because oftentimes when I'm talking to new workers, it'll be for kind of job security purposes. And I don't mean to say things over and over again, but yeah, having a union does help with job security because the management then needs to follow a process in order to actually lay off or fire a worker. It can't just be based off of preferences or, I guess shareholder needs. There needs to actually be a process about how it's determined who's laid off through seniority and other things. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to keep putting things in the chat. It's just helpful to kind of know what experiences were, and it might help with questions later regarding what we have for state employment. So I want to talk again about membership. We are only as strong as our members. Becoming a member addresses pretty much all, if not 2/3 of the ingredients that are necessary for us to have power to negotiate fair contracts and stand up to management if they are going outside of their reasonable power or reasonable decisions. And so by joining as a member, you are being part of the organized people part, and your dues are contributing to the organized resources part. And if you're an active member, then your ideas get put in with the other members that are actively participating, and through democratic processes, we can make better decisions and know that what we are working on is representative of the experiences of members. And again, it's one of those things, if we all pitch in together, then we can fight for better working conditions, wage increases, and more. There's a pride that comes with being a MAPE member. I'm actually starting a membership declaration campaign at my local where we're just sharing why we are a member and what makes us, proud to be a union member. And I think that's an important part. Like, I'm proud to pay my union dues, and I know that money is tight in these times, but it's one of those things of, we put money towards our values and we make room in our budget for the things that matter. And I've just seen over my 12 years how much our union matters. And if I didn't put money towards it, I would be going against my values of shared collective power and fairness in working conditions. And so again, there's just a pride that goes along with that. So I have the link here, and I think great, Meredith put that in the chat, so thanks, Meredith. So we can go over, I'm going to actually maybe go off of the PowerPoint and start navigating around the website. And I might actually just start, sorry, I'm gonna skip out of this and make sure I have the right thing pulled up here. Maybe I'll just do this. Oh, no. Sorry, I should be a little bit more organized here. Share my screen. Okay, so if you're on mape.org, so pretty easy, to short URL, you just click here to the Join MAPE page, and the top here will have just information about reasons to join MAPE. We have a plug here for the session you are in right now, MAPE Basics. And we have some tip sheets in here for new hires that just gives information. A lot of the things, the benefits you'll see in there are because we have a union. Whether it's your 40-hour vacation credit that you get when you start at the state, we negotiated that in our contract. If it was up to management, you wouldn't have that, unfortunately. Vacation accrual credits, I think that's on there. That is something we negotiated in our contract back in like 2018, I think. And it's something that management now uses for attracting employees to come work for the state. But thank a union for that, because we were the ones that proposed that for contract negotiations, and they wanted to fight us, but we were able to prevail. So anyway, there's just some handy information there. We have the dues calculator here, which is just for your reference. It's not part of the sign up process, but it's good that you can just kind of put your hourly wage and see what your dues will be per pay period. So if you're making $30 an hour, you can see that. You will notice that when you get up there in wages, that there's a cap of $34.50. I think that's at like $47 or $46 is around where that cap comes in. But the actual sign up form starts at section A. You're just going to make sure to fill in all the required fields and so that it will submit. And feel free to put in information in the non-required fields because it's all helpful. There's two places that you need to sign. The first one is the section A, and it's basically a declaration that you accept membership with MAPE and that MAPE is representing you for the purpose of collective bargaining. The second one is authorizing the dues to be deducted from your paycheck automatically. So it's pretty seamless. And you will see it in your pay stub in the after tax deductions column. The fine print here is basically just talking about if you ever wanted to drop your membership, you can do that not more than 45 days and not less than 30 days before the date that you join. So if you joined today, you would count 30 days ahead. So like April 20th would be like the cutoff. And then the 14-day period before that is when you can drop. Most people don't drop their membership, but you have the right to do it. I think the reasons for that are not very much, because if it's anything to do with how we are functioning as an organization, you have the power to change that. And I'm always happy to hear from members who are like, something's not working here, or why aren't we working on this? And every day I'm always happy to meet with people and just talk about how we can make sure that your needs are being heard in our union. This last section here is optional. So you could completely skip it and still become a member of MAPE. There is an important factor here. By becoming a state worker, you will find, or maybe you know this already, that your job gets politicized in interesting and sometimes surprising ways. And by contributing to MAPE's PAC, we have members that sit on the PAC board that screen candidates for state elected positions, so like the legislature or the governor's office. And you've probably seen yard signs that say that this candidate is labor endorsed, or endorsed by a particular union. And so that is what the screening is for, is to decide which political candidate aligns with the values and the priorities of MAPE, both, for state work that needs to get done, as well as the labor movement more broadly. So they're generally going to be more pro-worker, pro-labor, pro-government services, and proper funding and support for all that the state does to support Minnesotans. So your money goes towards that. We also do like door knocking and support endorsed candidates. And if you're interested in politics, it's a great way to be involved in MAPE. None of your union dues are ever used towards partisan political activity. And so there is this firewall here. That's why we have a separate PAC compared to your union dues that are for nonpartisan political activities that are for our union power and our contract. So that's about and then you just click submit, and you sometimes in some locals there's like a membership gift. I know we do t-shirts, but depends on the local, but you'll probably hear from someone maybe in a couple of weeks just to connect. And so I'd be interested to hear, is anyone on the call already a member? Maybe just give an emoji, a reaction button, or anything to indicate it. I'd love to see y'all. It's a little hard for me to see people, so hopefully I'll see them. Oh, I saw some. Yay! Awesome. Rayanne, Sarah, I think I saw Beth too. Awesome. Sorry if I missed you. But that's awesome. And I hope that you will take some time. Feel free to, I will not be offended. Feel free to multitask, to just sign up now. It's easy to forget about it. But really it is one of those things that the sooner that you do it, I think in 2 days actually is the cutoff for you to join as a member to vote in the elections of our union. So join now, honestly, so that you can vote in our spring, or in our special elections that include everything, including for statewide president, which is a pretty important role in our union. I'd want to have a voice in that if I was represented by MAPE. So join today, and hopefully I have the date right. Feel free, Cynthia or Meredith, to correct me if I'm wrong about the 22nd being the cutoff for becoming a member to vote.
The 22nd is correct. So
okay.
Join by end day on Friday to be able to vote in the election. Voting begins June 5th.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thanks for confirming that. All right, I just want to make sure that I'm covering other stuff. I'm almost done talking at you, so get your questions ready. Why am I? Oh, I want to bring this over here so I can make sure to cover other MAPE website stuff. Okay, so I mentioned how to find your local. So I just went to this locals tab here. You can just like put your name in and it will tell you right here what your local is. And then you can click on that and see, you know, when your local meetings are. If you scroll down, you'll see events if they put them up there. Very importantly, you can see your officers and stewards in this tab. And so you can see who your local president is. I'm here as the membership secretary for our local, and then stewards. So if you are ever dealing with anything or just have a question, you can reach out to any steward listed on your locals page. They are stewards obviously for your whole region, but and you could, if you've got multiple locals in your region, you'd be able to see right here if they're in your local or not. So so you have that. You can also use the Find Your Steward. I don't find it the easiest, sorry, to use. I kind of just prefer to look up from the locals tab, but that exists. Our contract, there's some resources, like this is where you'd find our contract. There's a PDF version and a Word version. Pay grids, I definitely recommend kind of just learning how to read it. It's not necessarily just something that you can always figure out on your own. I had to have someone explain it to me, and it took me a while to ask for help reading it. So I didn't really understand like when I was getting raises or why. So just understanding that can be really, really helpful. And then past contracts are here too for comparison, which it is sometimes helpful to just have that comparison point. But that's kind of in the weeds. I would just, 2025, 2027 contract there. And then on the homepage, we have some good reasons. Like you'll always see like headlines on the homepage, and it's great to just read the highlights here. Our comms team does an awesome job of picking out the hot topics to be communicated out. And we have hot topics here, I guess. So that will be included in the MAPE newsletter that is sent to MAPE statewide. So I'll talk a little bit more about newsletter in a second. So we've got hot topics and action items. So if you're interested in getting involved, there'll be action items here. And there's a lot. We'll talk a little bit more about getting involved in just a little bit too. So I just want to talk about like newsletters and communication. So you'll get the MAPE statewide newsletter, which is again statewide stuff. Also make sure that you're on your local email list. And if you're not sure if you're getting local emails, don't hesitate to reach out to your local officer and ask. They'd be happy to like check and make sure that you're on the list to get any information about from your local. Because that's a little bit more targeted to just goings on within your local, which is a great way to organize ourselves. And then I do want to just back here. I'm gonna have to start talking a little less because I want to leave 10 minutes for questions. But MAPE membership, just going back to this a little bit, it's a little confusing because sometimes when people get onboarded by HR might use incorrect words, like saying you're a MAPE member. And a lot of people sometimes mistakenly believe that they took a job at the state and so they're automatically a member. But the correct terminology is that you are represented by MAPE and you are a non-member until you join as a member. You have to actually fill out that sign-up form that I was going through. And so it shows you kind of a membership, like you actually have a say. Non-members don't pay dues, they don't have a say, and it is your default status. And you can definitely show up to a local meeting. If there was a vote, you wouldn't be able to like necessarily vote on anything at your local meeting, but if some people like if just go to your local meeting and try to learn and get your bearings, and then you're making a very informed choice, I guess. But also just remember, as a member, you get to shape what we do as a union. You get to have a say. So it's not like you're signing on to some stagnant platform that, oh, I don't agree with that, so I can't be a member. No, you should become a member so that you have a say in that platform, and that can be molded. I think I already kind of went over, dues. Yeah, I probably should have said, besides just saying there's the calculator, it's calculated based off of 75% of 1 hour of pay. And so and it's bi-weekly, and again, there's a cap of $34.50. And okay, benefit notes. I hope everyone automatically was notified about their vacation accrual service credit or vacation service accrual credit. You should get like official documentation. If you didn't get that, you should definitely ask HR. But essentially, this is something we negotiated during our like 2018 contract, something like that. But it was huge. What it does is any job that you had prior to coming to the state that was applicable, that made you qualify for your job or was similar in nature, the years that you were in that job count towards the amount of vacation time that you get. I came to the state before this was offered, and I got only the minimum 4 hours of vacation time, and it wasn't a lot. I had to be really careful about my vacation usage. So I'm just really excited that people coming to the state now get this and can get more vacation time accrual with each pay period, so it equals more vacation time every year. So that's huge. If you aren't sure if you're getting it, you should reach out to HR. Oh, awesome. I'm so glad when that was helpful. Retirement accounts. We talked about the healthcare savings plan and the way that vacation, that if you leave the state and you have excess vacation time, it goes into that. You are automatically signed up for the healthcare savings plan, but make sure that you sign into MSRS to move your 1% of pre-tax earnings going into it into something other than the money market. If you're close to retirement, maybe you want to keep it in the money market, but it's not going to grow that much. So definitely take some time to figure out your risk level for how long you are till retirement. And you can always talk to an MSRS rep. And I definitely recommend just like setting up an appointment with them. If you're not sure about what to invest your 1% in. Kind of same goes for deferred comp. Definitely sign up for the deferred comp. It is not mandatory. You have to sign up. And we have a $500 match. So if you contribute $500 within the state fiscal year, you will get $500 matched by the employer. If anything above and beyond that, you are investing. It's awesome for your retirement. It won't be matched. But I can't recommend that enough. It's really part of a healthy retirement plan. And again, you can work with a MSRS rep to kind of figure out which investments make sense for you within the deferred comp. And this is just a nice complement to the pension plan. Sick leave, the contract has information about ways to use it. And if you leave it, it's transferred at 40%, not 100% of value. These are FMLA jobs, eligible jobs. And so you're eligible for it after 1,250 hours worked over 12 months. And this is an important point because it can be used in conjunction with our paid parental leave. So people are doing finagling, and then add on top of that the state benefit for paid leave. People are putting together different programs. if you're the birthing parent, you can add FMLA into that. All right, 1 or 2 more slides, then we'll get to questions. So getting involved. So once you're a member, the question is how you want to get involved in MAPE. And the great thing about it is no matter what you care about the most or what you like doing, there's a place for you to be involved with MAPE. And it can either be so that you're growing your leadership skills or growing a particular skill that you would like to, or it's utilizing a skill that you already have. So these are, on the left side here, we have things like if you care about justice or transparency or accessibility. Like I have a coworker who's very passionate about making accessible documents in meetings. And so she was asking just the other day about like a work group for that and how she can be more involved in that way on top of other ways she's involved. If you like talking to people, I would be like, you should join my welcome committee where I have one-to-one conversations with new hires so that we can build relationships with them and share information and ask them to be a member. If you are kind of more of an introvert, there's ways for you to do like writing. I have someone who wanted to be on my welcome committee, but is just very introverted. And instead now she's like our MAPE swag distribution person. And I couldn't get on without her because she's taken all the new members and sending out t-shirts to them. And it just really helps me out a lot. So it's really just about like connecting with other leaders in MAPE and figuring out what you like doing. If you like politics, if you want to work on a committee that's like talking about MAPE rules, that's something that, is about transparency and processes. But it's, I would just encourage you to have some conversations with other MAPE leaders and learn about what they do, what they need help with, anything like that. And then this is just an overview of kind of key dates, key things that happen, and how to plug in at various levels. Some people have maybe more time availability to be involved in MAPE. And no matter your time availability, if it's high or low, there's a place for you. Obviously, things heat up right during negotiations. So if you can show up at, the hotel where the negotiations are happening, that's a one-time thing, but it's super powerful. If you've got a little time every week, you might want to think about becoming a steward. So, and monthly, just showing up to local meetings at first is really important. So that's what I got. I think there's a lot of stuff in the chat here, and I want to make sure there's time for all questions. Meredith, how are we doing on questions in the chat? Is there anything you think verbally we should address?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I was answering questions as we went along. Michelle asked if she used to be an Ask Me member and she's moving into MAPE. She asked if her membership transfers or if she needs to sign up, or if you have to sign up. It'd be cool if our systems talk to each other like that, but they don't. How do we find out about what?
Oh, sorry. You did answer. Like you do have to sign up as a member because it's a different structure. It's a different kind of, like different dues, and the organization is different, and we want people to have a choice. So that's kind of why that works. But I get your point. So.
And then, oh yeah, there's a good point. Somebody mentioned how the match for MSR for your MNDCP is fiscal year based. So if people who are new hires now want to get that $500 match for our current fiscal year due to when they're getting hired on, they might want to play with their pay contributions now in order to try to get that match. That's a very good point. And then Joe asked about how do we find out about what will be in the next negotiations?
That's a good question. Meredith, do you want to weigh in on that as a lead contract action team person?
We will be, we're starting to get ready for our next round of negotiations now. We are currently in the process of electing our next negotiators. The next negotiators will be, like, the announcement of who gets elected for negotiations will be announced in June, I believe June 23rd. And then once the negotiators are elected, we're going to be starting a process of onboarding them, training them, and kind of pretty soon after that having listening sessions for some of what we want to negotiate for. This is a democratic process. And what gets put on the table as proposals in negotiations is based on what people bring up at listening sessions. That being said, we're facing a very, very, very hard negotiations round this coming year. Last negotiations, they tried to take away our paid parental leave that Lauren talked about. They also tried to dramatically change and increase our healthcare costs and shift more of the costs onto us. And we expect to have the heart for negotiations to be even more difficult this coming round.
Yeah, so start early, we gotta get organized, and yeah, that was great. Thanks, Meredith. Appreciate it. Before we move to answer the other questions, I'm gonna just put something in the chat. Please fill out the survey that I just linked in the chat. Feel free to do it now. Do it in the next couple days if you can remember. But this gives us feedback about how helpful this session was, and we can also connect you to the local officers in your local, which I think can be really, really helpful. So please fill this out, and I'll remind at the end of the session too. But in case you have to leave now, just wanted you to have that. And then I think we're at the next question, which is how does the healthcare insurance work if there's a strike? And in generally, and Meredith, feel free to chime in if I'm missing something, but your health insurance coverage, you have to work up into a particular day of the month. I'm trying to remember which day of the month it is, but if we call a strike, we're generally very strategic about when we go on strike so that that everyone continues to have health insurance for at least that first month, because we're working up until that day of the month. But again, anyone, Meredith or Cynthia, feel free to correct me.
That's right. We generally you need to work at least one day in that month. It's the same principle for, like, if you were to ever leave a job. Like my last job, I made sure to work that first work day in the month, and then my last day was the next day, and I had health insurance coverage from that job for the remainder of that month. The same thing is at work if we were to go on strike. We try to start a strike at the very beginning of the month if we were ever to go on strike. We don't ever want to go on strike, but it's a tool in our toolbox, and sometimes we have to use it. The last time we went on strike was 2001.
Yeah. So we would be very planful about a strike if we were to do it, and that would include, like Meredith said, starting it at the beginning of the month, at the end of the month, because then that would put a disadvantage for a time that we can sustain this, and still, be protected with our healthcare costs. So good question. Then we have a question about how does the match work from AFSCME to MAPE? And I'm guessing, Michelle, are you referring to the deferred comp program?
Yes.
Okay. So now that you're in MAPE, I think it should be automatic, but I would keep your eye on that, because I'm guessing you were enrolled in the deferred comp when you were in AFSCME and then you transferred to MAPE. And so I would keep an eye on your pay stub and make sure that ahead of the end of the fiscal year that you are getting your full match as under our MAPE contract. And if it's not, that would be probably a question to either MSRS or HR to make sure that you have the right kind of settings and self-service and whatnot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing some answers to questions here. All right, I think that's all the questions in the chat, but did I miss any? If I did, it was not intentional whatsoever. So please let me know if I missed any of your questions. Well, look at that. We ended right at 1. So thanks everyone for your great questions and your engagement. I'll stay on for like a minute or two, just to see if any other questions come in. But thank you, Meredith, for helping out here. And thanks for putting the survey link in again. Again, please fill it out. I'm always making sure to follow up with anything that comes from the survey. So. Oh, yeah, Ty, I can definitely email you the survey link so that you have that. I would
Thank
recommend
you.
for most folks to just click in it now while you're here, and then maybe save it or something. All right, not seeing any other questions, just thank yous, and thank you to everyone. Hope this was helpful. Have a good day. Bye.